Hello YouTube and welcome to World of Warships. Today we were taking a look at yet another of its ships, the USS Langley. And yes, this USS Langley is a first aircraft carrier that you will get in the game if you're playing like me as US. And let's talk a little bit about history. So the USS Langley, or CV-1 or AV-3, was the United States Navy's first aircraft carrier, converted in 1920 from the collier USS Jupiter, which was the AC-3, in the US Navy's first turbo-electric powered ship. Conversion of another collier was planned but cancelled due to the Washington Naval Treaty requiring the cancellation of partially built Lexington-class battlecruisers Lexington and Saratoga, freeing up their hulls for conversion to the aircraft carriers. Lexington and Saratoga, Langley was named after the Samuel Pierpont Langley, an American aviator pioneer. Following another conversion to the seaplane tender, Langley fought in the World War II. On the 27th February 1942, she was attacked by 9 twin-engine Japanese bombers of the Japanese 21st and the 23rd Naval Air Flotillas, and so badly damaged that she had to be scuttled by her escorts.
Engaging enemy.
So a little bit about the service history of the USS Langley. As a collier, President William H. Taft attended the ceremony when Jupiter's keels were laid down in 18 October 1911 at the Mare Island Naval Shipyard in Vallejo, California. She was launched on 14th of August 1912 and sponsored by Mrs. Thomas F. Room and commissioned 7th of April 1913 under the commander Joseph M. Reeves. Her sister ship were the Cyclops, which disappeared without a trace in the World War I, Proteus and Nereus, which disappeared on the same route as the Cyclops in the World War II. After successfully passing her trials and turboelectric powered ship in the US Navy, Jupiter embarked on the United States Marine Corps detachment in San Francisco, California, and reported to the Pacific Fleet at Mazatlan, Mexico on the 27th April 1914, bolstering US naval strength of the Mexican Pacific coast, 10 days of Veracruz crisis. She remained on the Pacific coast until she departed for Philadelphia on 10th of October, en route the collier steamed to the Panama Canal on the Columbus Day, the first vessel to transit from west to east.
Returning.
Prior to the America's entry into the World War I, she cruised the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico, attached to the Atlantic Fleet Auxiliary Division. The ship arrived at Norfolk, Virginia on 6 April 1917 and assigned to the Naval Overseas Transport Service. Interrupted her coaling operation by the 2 cargo voyages in France 1917 and November 1918. The first voyage transported a naval aviation detachment of 7 officers and 122 men to England. It was the first US aviation detachment to arrive in Europe and was commanded by Lieutenant Kenneth Whiting, who became Langley's first executive officer for 5 years later. Jupiter was back on Norfolk 23, 1919, when she sailed for Brest, France on March for coating duty on the European waters to expedite the return of victorious veterans from the United States. Upon reaching Norfolk on 17th August, the ship was transferred to the west coast. Her conversion to aircraft carrier was authorized 11th July 1919 and she sailed to Hampton Roads, Virginia on 12th December, where she was decommissioned on 24th March 1920. So then the Jupiter was converted into the first US aircraft carrier at the Navy Yard, Norfolk, Virginia, for the purpose of conducting experiments in the new idea of seaborne aviation. On the 11th April 1920, she was renamed Langley in honor of Sir Samuel Pierpont Langley, an American astronomer, physicist, aeronautics pioneer, and aircraft engineer, and she was given the hull number CV-1. She recommissioned 20th March 1922 with Commander Kenneth Whiting in command. As the first American aircraft carrier, Langley was the scene of several seminal events in U.S. naval aviation. On the 17th October 1922, Lieutenant Virgil C. Griffin piloted the first plane, a Voight VE-7, launched from her decks. Though it was not the first time an airplane has taken off a ship, though Langley was not the first ship with an installed flight deck. This one launching was monumental importance for the U.S. Navy. The Aero aircraft carrier was born, introducing the Navy what was to become a vanguard of its forces in the future. With Langley underway 9 days later, Lieutenant Commander Godfrey de Courcelles Chevalier made the first landing in an Aeromarine 39B. On 18th November, Commander Whiting was the first naval aviator to be catapulted from the carrier's deck. An unusual feature of Langley was the provision of carrier pigeon house on the stern between the 5-inch guns. Pigeons has been carried aboard seaplanes for message transport since World War I and were to be carried on aircraft operated from Langley. The pigeons were trained in Norfolk Naval Shipyard while the Langley was undergoing conversion. As long as the pigeons were released a few at a time for exercise, they returned to the ship. But when the whole flock was released, Langley was anchored off the Tangier Island. The pigeons flew south and roosted in the cranes of the Norfolk shipyard. The pigeons never went to sea again, and the former pigeon house became executive officers' first quarters. Nice. But the early plans for conversion of Lexington and Saratoga included in the compartment for pigeons. By January 15th, 1923, Langley had begun flight operations and tests of Caribbean Sea and carrier landings. In June, she steamed to Washington, D.C. to give a demonstration of flying exhibition before civil and military dignitaries. She arrived in Norfolk 13th of June and commenced training along the Atlantic coast and Caribbean, which carried her through the end of the year. In 1924, Langley participated in more maneuvers and exhibitions and spent summer at Norfolk repairs and alterations. She departed for the West Coast late in the year, arrived San Diego, California, and to join Pacific Battle Fleet. A little bit about the World War II. On the entry of the US into World War II, Langley was anchored off the Cavite, Philippines. On 8th of December, following the invasion of Philippines by Japan, she departed Cavite for Balikpapan in the Dutch East Indies. As Japanese advances continued, Langley departed for Australia, arriving in Darwin on 1st January 1942. Then she became a part of American, British, Dutch, Australian Command Naval Forces. Until 11th January, Langley assisted the Royal Australian Air Force in running anti-submarine patrols out of Darwin. Langley went to Fremantle, Australia to pick up Allied aircraft and transport them to Southeast Asia, carrying 32 P-40 fighters belonging to the Far East Air Force 13th Pursuit Squadron. At Fremantle, Langley and the Sea Witch, loaded with created P-40s, joined the convoy designated MS-5 that had arrived from Melbourne, composed of United States Army transport Willard A. Holbrook and the Australian transports Duntune and Khartoum, escorted by Phoenix, departed Fremantle on 22nd February. Langley and the Sea Witch left the convoy 5 days later to deliver the planes to Giatap in Java. Cilacap. Sorry, I'm very bad at pronouncing these. In the earlier hours of 27th February, Langley rendezvoused with her anti-submarine screen, the destroyers Whipple and Edsall. Early that morning, a Japanese reconnaissance aircraft located the formation at 11:40, about 75 miles south of Giatap. The seaplane tender, along with Edsall and Whipple, came under attack by 16 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers and the Imperial Japanese Navy Service Takao Kokutai,
Approaching target.
led by Lieutenant Jiro Adachi, flying out of the Spencer Airfield on Bali, and escorted by 15 A-6M Ryzen fighters. Rather than dropping all the bombs at once, the Japanese bombers attacked, releasing partial salvos. Since they were level bombing from medium altitude, Langley was able to alter helm when the bombs were released and evade the first and second bombing passes, but the bombers altered their tactics on the third pass and bracketed the directions Langley could turn. As a result, Langley took 5 hits as a mix of 250 and 60 kilogram bombs as well as 3 near misses with 16 crewmen killed. The topside burst into planes, steering was impaired, and the ship was developed into a 10% list to the port. Unable to negotiate narrow mouth of Tijatap harbor, Langley was dead in the water as her engine room flooded. At 13:32, the order to abandon ship was passed. The escorting destroyers fired 9 4-inch shells and 2 torpedoes into Langley's hull to ensure that she didn't fall into enemy hands, and she sank. Her approximate scuttle coordinates are, well, in detail, you can see them on wiki. After being transferred to Pecos, many of her crew were lost when Pecos was sunk en route to Australia. 31 of 33 pilots assigned to the 13th Pursuit Squadron being transported to Langley were lost when the Edsail when she was sunk on the same day when responding to the distress calls of Pecos. Yeah, and apparently Langley appears in several scenes on The Flying Fleet, a 1929 silent film about naval aviators. So that's a little bit about Langley in the world of in the history. So the second is when we talk about Langley as American Tier 4 aircraft carrier in the world of warships. And this is information from the Wargaming's wiki. The Langley was an unfortunate distinction, being the slowest aircraft carrier in the game. If discovered, she cannot get away from everything, not even battleships. Keep an eye on your map and start moving long before the enemies get near the detection range. With only 1 squadron of each of fighters, torpedo bombers and dive bombers, Langley commanders will have to make sure that every strike mission counts. The carrier itself starts with no anti-aircraft armament whatsoever. It does have 4 127mm cannons, which will sink a heavily damaged destroyer on occasion, but their range is pitiful. It is highly recommended to stay back and hide, or try to stay with the team. She has aircraft in large squadrons, where most ships of that tier have little to no anti-aircraft capabilities. She's not easily detected around 10 kilometers detection range from surface if exposed. She can one-shot anything if connect with a good torpedo salvo on a target. She's able to deploy 3 squadrons, 1 of each type. She has a little bit weird hitbox, of which should confuse attackers and make them miss the shells. But her cons are incredibly slow top speed, around 15 knots, slow turning, requiring more space than most battleship and carriers, and like all low-tier carriers, it's hopeless once found. Likely no armor, getting citadel by most HE shells easily. Right, so that's a little bit about the ship in the game, and also basically I'm trying to combine information from both Wargaming Wiki and the historical wiki. Let me know how you like it. And here is what I believe to be a rather outstanding play, is I've been able to play with her quite a bit, and I'm actually enjoying playing the aircraft carriers. I didn't know that they were so much fun. She is rather simple to start with, but has everything in the game, difficult to master. You have to be very careful when aiming planes. How do you approach? Try to identify your targets, that they're not heavily, you know, AA guns or something, because you will get a lot of aircraft lost if you do so. The good bet when playing would be take the fighters with the rockets to take down destroyers mainly, while using other types of aircraft for different targets. And as you can see, the fighters are not particularly effective against the heavily armored battleship. I would advise torpedo bombers against the battleship and the dive bombers against cruisers, but of course you can mix and match and in some cases inflict some damage. When fighting with the other players, I think it's more of a harassment tool if you fly fighters against battleships than anything else, and it's also pretty suicidal. As you can see, now I'm flying torpedo bombers, and I was thinking whether I should take down the destroyer, which I think is a very bad idea because those are quick and agile, but rather to go and try to sink that Nikolai target. yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the future. I'm a little bit sad that you cannot change the squadron on this guy, but I mean, overall, pretty fun to fly. I cannot wait to see future aircraft carriers, or not the future, but the ones that higher tier. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. And for the rest, we are approaching Nikolai, and let's see if we manage to put a couple of torpedoes. Guys, also let me know if it's possible to get a salvo of torpedoes, or you have to take them one at a time. I'm also curious to know about that.
Engaging enemy.
For example, here, as you can see, I can only do one. I'm aiming a little bit ahead of her, dumping, and let's hope it connects. So let's see. Ka-tunk! There it goes. Beautiful. Now that did some damage. Let's take another one.
We're under attack. Approaching target.
Approaching target. Let's see. And
Taking
another.
fire.
Ka-tunk. I think I might have released... Oh, no, never mind. It's going nicely. Look at that. And another salvo, and I think she'll be a goner. There she goes, up in flames. Alright, now... Shall we try and torpedo this destroyer? The V-170? I think it's a German destroyer. Only... Yeah... I think only German ones have these type of names. V something and K something and whatnot. But anyway, let's see how will it perform. Okay, we are... I don't think I will be able to hit that far ahead, but you never know.
Returning.
Dumping, and of course, now better I was shot down. Okay. Now we are taking the fighters, because fighters I think are most effective when it comes to taking down the destroyer. And we are coming almost to the end of the battle, so as always guys, you know what to do. Like if you like the episode, hit subscribe, do leave me some comments and tips about how to play the aircraft carrier. I'm really eager to see what you guys come up with. As I said, I'm a new player, so pretty much any advice will be deeply appreciated.
Engaging enemy.
Let's see if they connect, and dump it!
Returning to ship.
Dang it! Almost. Close but no cigar. Let's get another pass, and let's hope that this time it will connect. Getting ready.
Engaging enemy.
Aim. Fire!
Returning to ship.
Almost incapacitated, but I'm pretty sure this will be the end of it quite quickly. Alright, sending another wave, but as you see it went. So, as always guys, like if you like, put your tips in the comments below, and I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you very much for watching. This is Grumpworks signing off.